Hello again. My name is John and I am a nobody. You don't have to know much about guns to know what a Walther PPK is. It's James Bond's weapon of choice. So if you've ever seen a James Bond film, you know what a Walther PPK looks like. I'm only mentioning this because the Walther appears in another story, so it's important that you know what it is. So I used to live in a place in East Germany called Lichtenberg, and it was not a good time to be living in Berlin. The wall had come down and people had basically, if they were living in the East, they'd spent their whole life being conditioned by the government, the then government. And one day they woke up to find out that their passport was no longer valid and that everything they had learnt at school was not true, that they had been lied to their entire lives. So I lived in this ramshackle place in Berlin, East Berlin, in Lichtenberg. It was an attic with a leaky roof and pretty much horrible. I went out to my neighborhood to have a look, see what it was like, and it was quite vibrant then. It had a lot of different bars and pubs and stuff, but there were lots of skinheads around. People who had been taught that fascism was bad had suddenly discovered that everything they'd been taught was a lie, so maybe fascism was not bad. It's not like today where you go to Berlin and synagogues set on fire and people are chanting all kinds of anti-Jew stuff. I'm not a Jew, but I have actually been to Israel. And it's a bit frightening if you lived in old Berlin to suddenly discover that all these things are coming back. This anti-Semitism is coming back, which in my day used to be something that was not considered good, is now salonfähig, as they say in German, now completely acceptable. Hate is never acceptable in my book. Racism is never acceptable in my book. But now it's come back as something that is perfectly acceptable. If your racism is pointed at somebody who is a white man, then it's okay. You know, you can be racist. The Royal Air Force recently apologized for being racist towards white men in their attempts to encourage new recruits. Everything's been turned upside down. Everything has gone back. And we are now living in weird times where what was once considered disgraceful is now considered perfectly acceptable. Anyway, so there I was in Lichtenberg and surrounded by skinheads, and I didn't like it. I didn't feel safe. It was a strange time to be in Germany or in Berlin. They'd had several attacks on foreigners. There was one guy in the middle of Berlin, Kurfürstenstraße, who got attacked. He was Irish, and somebody had come up to him, a white guy, and they'd asked him what was the time. And he'd looked and answered in German. He told them the time, but he had an Irish accent, so they beat the crap out of him. There was another guy, a black guy from England, who got thrown off of a train and and spent the rest of his life in a wheelchair because, well, he was the wrong colour. So what I decided to do was get what the Americans call a friend. So I went to a shop and bought a Walther. And then I went to a flea market and bought a holster, which didn't really cost much. Now, at that time, it was legal to carry certain weapons. So you could carry like something like the Walther, which I had. And if it only fired gas cartridges, it was legal. So I bought a Walther that would only fire gas cartridges, CS gas, and put it on my hip in the holster. It's not a nice feeling to walk around with a gun on your hip, believe me. It sounds like, or maybe some people think it's a cool thing to do or sexy or something, but it's not nice. I had it under my jacket, but every time you went to a bar or something, you were worried about it because somebody might see it, and even though it was legal, nobody knew that it was not, firing live rounds, and they might freak out. And not as much as they would, say, in the UK, where handheld firearms are verboten completely. But there, it was a bit different. But it helped me with my fear, I suppose, looking for another word, but I felt more comfortable when I went out if I knew I had that on me, which is kind of sad, but I did feel a lot more comfortable. It was the only friend I had in Lichtenberg, was the Walther. And as I said, it will feature in another story, but it's not good to have to wear a gun on your hip, even though it does help you, and even though it can sometimes be advantageous. So I just wanted to warm you up, ready for the next story or a story down the line, which will be featuring the Walther, so you know what I'm talking about. Thank you very much once again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take good care of yourself and those you love, and all the very best to you. Tschüssikowski.